From the Mapleview Animal Hospital studios, this is the WHTC Morning News with Gary Stevens and Peg McNichol on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
Welcome back to the WHTC Morning News for this Thursday, September the 17th. Thursday mornings, we have a chance to chat with five-term U.S. House Representative Bill Huizenga of R-Zeeland. He joins us via the Zoom connection from outside the U.S. Capitol building in Washington. Bill, good morning. Glad you are with us on this Thursday morning.
It's good to be with you, Gary. Thanks. Appreciate it.
You're under a little bit of time constraint. Explain why.
Well, so the House is going to be opening up here soon, and I need to get myself in line to do something called a 1 minute. I'm going to be, frankly, talking about some of the violence that we've seen in West Michigan. You know, there was a shooting in Muskegon Heights. There was a shooting in Wyoming. There's been multiple homicides that have been going on. We've had some other disturbances happening, and so I'm going to try to address that.
Now, the question would be, with you in Washington now, and so as many other House representatives trying to deal with the stimulus package. Fred Upton and the problem solvers put together a perhaps compromise proposal, putting out for it on Tuesday. Could you see a compromise coming up from both the House and Senate on this?
Potentially, but there's going to have to be a lot of movement happening. You have seen the White House move. The president has called for a higher number than what the Senate had attempted to pass. It got 52 votes last week, but you need 60 to be able to do anything in the Senate. You know, the $3.5 trillion Nancy Pelosi grab bag is not going to happen. As I've dove into the problem solvers a little bit, in fact, a good friend of mine is the chair, Tom Reed. He and I came in together. He's from upstate New York. Tom and I were talking about it yesterday, and one issue I think that many of us agree on is that we have to have some type of PPP, which is a Paycheck Protection Program, for restaurants and hospitality and that kind of thing. I mean, that's really where we're seeing a lot of our increase in our maintained unemployment rates. So the Fed yesterday, Federal Reserve had done a 2-day estimating conference. They are saying the recovery is going faster than what they had anticipated. Our deficit is lower than what they had anticipated, partially because we have more revenues going up. We ought to talk about that for the state of Michigan, by the way, interestingly. But we're seeing some really stubborn unemployment, not in manufacturing so much as in that service sector, and that's where we need to go. So there's a lot of things to agree on. Something that is a little problematic for me is a $500 billion fund for state and local governments. And I'm not saying that state and local governments are not feeling a pinch. The question is what is that right level? Because that's almost double what the CARES Act had laid out back when we did this in March. Michigan has nearly gone through, or at least allocated its CARES Act. But interestingly enough, in talking to the state legislators, there is a surplus in the school finance fund right now. There is also, the state does revenue estimating conferences, they're called. They had gone from a $2 billion deficit down to a $1 billion deficit to then they added a special one, and they're at $300 and some odd million deficit. Not insignificant, but when you're talking about spending $40 billion as a state, much, much different picture. So the question that a lot of us have is, how is this not going to just directly benefit the Illinois and New Yorks of the world, which have practiced complete malfeasance on budgeting and don't have some of the same constraints like Michigan has with a balanced budget amendment in our state constitution? How are we not going to just take good hard-earned taxpayer dollars, and frankly, a lot of it borrowed from future generations, and not just bail out people in New York and California and Illinois who've just made bad fiscal decisions? So that's going to be a tough one to kind of wrestle through.
One final thing. Nationally, CBS has been hitting hard on the president and the head of the CDC at odds over vaccines and masks and the like. There's been also some reaction to the president saying that blue states are more in line with the rise in coronavirus cases and basically ignoring the red states, the red state, blue state stuff. Again, for you and other Republicans, campaigning, you have to sort of say, the president says this, but maybe it should be the other way around. It's hard sometimes it's kind of hard for you Republicans to talk about.
Here's what I do know, because I watched the CDC. I watched the head of the CDC. I watched some of his comments yesterday, and then I watched what he had said after that. I watched the president's press conference yesterday when he was addressing that. And there's always there's a disagreement, but there's always a much sharper line that is tried to be honed out by the media on this. And so why? Because they're always looking for that controversy, right? They have to have that edge. And so I don't think those disagreements are nearly as big as what they were. The president, what they get portrayed. The president was talking about the vaccine. I mean, this was just a couple of days ago that suddenly, the cry was going out from the media that the president isn't going to distribute any of the vaccines, and suddenly the vaccines are getting rushed and all this other stuff. And he said this in his press conference yesterday, and he's absolutely right. If this was still the Obama-Biden administration, they would be touting how fast Project Warp Speed would be going and how much progress there has been made. So it's Gary, we are fully on in the silly season right now of campaigns and politics. We're trying to talk to the voters, and we'll be talking and are talking to the voters, both on the official side, but as well on the campaign side. And I'm looking forward to that.
Same thing with the blue state, red state thing that the president was reportedly saying about that.
That I don't know. I did not see what he had to say about that.
One final thing, Bill, and I do need to touch upon this. In reaction to what the president and the CDC was saying, the people at the World Health Organization saying governments and medical community all need to be on the same page. Everybody's got to be on the same page for dealing with this. While it might be nice, to me, and maybe I'm wrong on this, to me it sounds like, well, we all have to be in lockstep together, and we can't dispute or we can't defer or we can't argue about this.
Hey, Gary, the simple fact is that health professionals disagree, all right, on how exactly to deal with this. I just had a text from one of them last night, who's an emergency room doctor in Holland. And who was expressing some concern about what was going on and trying to get a better understanding of how the state of Michigan was dealing with this. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that finally the state realized that you can't run a cross-country meet with a mask on. I mean, there's New York is not allowing any indoor dining, yet we're allowed indoor dining here in Michigan, right? I mean, there's an inconsistency all over the place. It's exactly where states are going. We have to figure out what is best for each state. Each state is best at figuring that out with national guidance and guidelines, which is good. World Health Organization, oh yeah, that's right. This is the same WHO that denied that the coronavirus was a pandemic and was an issue, and completely fell down on the job at the very beginning of this. So that's why you see a lot of us not losing a whole lot of sleep about the massive financial support going to the World Health Organization from the United States, since we carry it along like we do a lot of other UN type of organizations. So it's time for accountability.
Zeeland Congressman Bill Huizenga, I want to thank you very much for joining us today on WHTC's Morning News. With your thoughts and comments, if all goes well, let's do this again next Thursday morning. Thank you, sir.
Sounds good, Gary. Thanks. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. That's Zeeland Congressman Bill Huizenga on Real News Now, 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.